Alright YouTube, welcome back to another video. As you can guess by the title, we are talking about signs that you are low class. And this is the follow-up video to a previous one that I did about a month ago or so. And I have to preface these videos with the warning that some of the content in here may be perceived by some of you as offensive. But please understand that that is not my primary intention. My primary intention here, again, is not to offend anybody, but rather to provide the framework for a discussion about what makes people actually classy, and hopefully lead some of you who are watching to do some introspection and think about ways that you can better yourself as a person. And that is something that I always try to take away from these types of videos whenever I'm watching somebody else's content that is along the same veins as this. So quick wrist check for any of the subscribers who enjoy my watch content. I'm currently wearing my Grand Seiko SBGX 261, the quartz model, and it's been a while since I've worn this because I was on a field op recently, and I'm glad to have it back on my wrist. So without further ado, let's actually get into the first point of the video, and this is going to be a bit of a long one, but it's important because this is a problem that is, I believe, becoming more and more pervasive throughout society as social media continues to have an ever-growing role in our lives, and that is thinking that you're the main character. So while main character syndrome is not a genuine mental health condition, this is a pattern of behavior that many people in society do exhibit. So people with main character syndrome are typically very self-centered. Their focus is almost always on their own feelings, and they disregard the feelings of others in their daily interactions with people. These are the kind of people who you would tend to, or who you would confide in whenever you have a problem, but will dismiss your feelings while telling you all about how they went through something worse. I'm sure we've all had that interaction before, where you're going through some sort of really challenging personal or professional issue in your life, and you go to someone who you believe is your friend, you confide in them, you tell them about your problem, hoping that at least they'll be able to empathize with you and maybe provide some good advice, but instead, before you can even finish your story, they interrupt you and they tell you about how they went through something much more challenging, much worse than what you're going through, and how you should just be a little bit more mentally tough and man up and take it, or something along those lines. I'm sure that all of you who are watching have probably had that conversation at least once in your lives, and if you haven't, then I would say that you should consider yourself lucky, because the result of that conversation is simply that you get left feeling more emotionally drained than you did going in, and no wiser, because you didn't actually get anything of any genuine help out of that conversation. But basically, what I am saying about main character syndrome, especially with regard to this example that I just gave, is that these people really like to exaggerate the adversities that they have gone through in life, because they feel it makes them seem more interesting and more credible as people. Basically, if you do these kinds of things, you are an attention seeker and you care more about yourself and the way that people perceive you than other people in general. If you go to a friend's wedding, for example, and all you do there is spend time posting selfies and bragging about your outfit and how much you're partying, instead of being physically present to congratulate the bride and groom on their big day, you might actually have main character syndrome. And main character syndrome, to me, is one of the biggest signs of being a low-class individual. The next thing that I think makes you a low-class individual is the inability to accept criticism. Now, I've talked about this before on the channel, but honestly, it's something that bears repeating. People who are low-class may have, again, exaggerated senses of importance, as I previously mentioned, in regard to main character syndrome, and they do not take feedback very well. If you try to give them feedback or criticism, they will either lash out or completely disregard what you say, because their ego tends to get in the way of them being able to have any self-awareness about their shortcomings. The thing with constructive criticism and feedback from people is that everyone needs to be able to receive it in order to improve at anything. I myself have been the recipient of it before many times, and it's something I continue to receive this day, especially in professional context. That's not the only context in which I receive constructive criticism. Many of you in the comments section of my videos have given me constructive criticism before, and I've done my best to implement it. But the thing is, if you do not have the capability to accept constructive criticism from other people, then it will be impossible for you to grow as a person and become high class if you are not capable of identifying and then correcting your shortcomings as an individual. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be poor communication skills. Now, not everyone is born with good communication skills. In fact, nobody is, because when you're a baby, you can't even talk. Your only forms of communication are whining, crying, or cooing for something, right? So nobody is inherently born with good communication skills, whatever that means. But the inability to express yourself eloquently because you might have a limited vocabulary is a indicator that you are low class. And neglecting the art of reading, and yes, I do say that reading is an art because it requires discipline. It requires an appreciation of people's different styles, and it requires you to understand the message that is trying to be communicated through the use of language, right? If you do not have a good vocabulary, if you cannot speak eloquently, if you are unable to read something and truly like glean the author's message from that, then that is a sign that you have poor communication skills, and that is a sign that you are low class. Additionally, the inability to actively listen to those whom you engage in conversation with is a surefire sign that you are low class. I recently got into a very nasty argument with somebody, which I won't go too much into the details of, but not only were they unable to actively listen to any of the points that I gave them, but they deliberately ignored my points and then attempted to, or they completely ignored my points and disregarded them in an effort to manipulate the conversation in their favor. And communicating with, or that level of toxic communication is extremely low class, and not only low class, but very manipulative and quite morally reprehensible, if you ask me. Lastly, in terms of communication, and this is not an all-inclusive thing, but this is the last thing I'll say about communication. Too often when we are speaking to others, we tend to interrupt them before they can finish their point and get their full message out. And that comes from the, again, the inability to actively listen to people. But interrupting people repeatedly because what you think you have to say is more important than their message is utterly classless behavior, and it's extremely rude. And what ends up happening is that when you interrupt somebody repeatedly and they don't get the chance to say what they want to say, because again, they have just as much right as you to speak their truth. When you take that away from them, it leaves them feeling much more negative about that interaction with you, and they will not want to spend any time with you or any time around you. So try to avoid interrupting people because it really does make you seem much more low class. The next thing that I want to talk about, and this is definitely going to ruffle some feathers, but I do believe that this needs to be spoken about, is individuals who are have no drive and have no ambition. I want to say unsuccessful people, but that's a bit of a blanket term and it oversimplifies the issue. What I'm really talking about here, and I owe this point to someone very close to me. You know who you are. But when you talk about people who have no drive and no ambition, that is an indicator that they do not have any class. People with class have drive, they have ambition, and they have goals. It is one thing to, try hard at something, to try your absolute best and fail at it and fall flat on your face. I can tell you guys that I have done exactly that many times before. When I was first trying to get into the Marine Corps, I was considering going the commissioned officer route and going to OCS, but my physical fitness was not up to standard. I had not done the work necessary to get into any good colleges, and I had no degree plan going forward. I had not applied for any scholarships, so my plans to become an officer were basically pointless because I had taken no action towards achieving that goal, and it didn't work out for me. So due to my own lack of preparation, my lack of planning, and my lack of initiative, I fell flat on my face and I failed at that. But my point here is that if you don't have any goals and you don't strive for growth financially, professionally, personally, physically, mentally, or emotionally, that makes you very low class because you don't have any desire to grow as a person or change or become better in any aspect. I feel like the things that I have just listed are mostly all-encompassing when it comes to everyone's lives. Everyone needs to have a job in society. Everyone needs to, have strong personal relationships because we are social creatures. We need to take care of our physical health, our mental health, and we need to be emotionally intelligent people so that way we don't go around pissing everyone off when we are in society. And not taking any time to put effort towards developing these things is a surefire sign that you have no class. Socrates has a quote about physical training that I believe can be applied to all aspects of life. And it is that no man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable. Now, obviously, Socrates was speaking about men, but in the context of this discussion and the fact that we're in 2025, I believe that applies to both genders. I believe that applies to everybody. And it applies as well to all of the previous aspects of life that I have just mentioned, professionally, personally, financially, physically, whatever. So moving on from that, the next thing that makes you low class, and this is a big one, is not having any intellectual depth. This is a skill that must be practiced and refined consistently. Consistently displaying shallowness in terms of your tastes is a big sign of not having any sort of class. Liking certain things is okay, but dismissing everything else despite their merits is closed-minded and makes you appear to be a simpleton. For example, I personally am a fan of Rolex watches. I have a couple myself, and I'm very fortunate to be an owner of them. I like their engineering. I like their design. I enjoy the quality and the reliability of a nice, modern, well-made Rolex. On the other hand, I mostly dislike Audemars Piguet. Some of their stuff is good, but most of it I would not bother spending money on. I don't like their collaboration pieces. I don't like the aesthetic of their concept and their offshore collection. And in general, to me, Audemars Piguet watches are much more fragile than Rolex, and they're much more expensive than Rolex watches, which makes them harder to replace and much less optimal as sports watches. whatever that means nowadays. But what I will say about Audemars Piguet is that I can acknowledge the amount of time, effort, and energy that goes into creating and designing each individual watch. There was a team of individuals at Audemars Piguet HQ in, in Switzerland. I'm not sure exactly where they're based out of, but in Switzerland, that sat down and poured hours and hours of work into designing and physically creating every single watch that the brand produces, and that is definitely something to be respected. Again, Audemars Piguet is not to my taste. I wouldn't really go out and spend the money on one for myself. But I can absolutely appreciate a nice, well-made watch when I see one. And I think that that is a trait that high-class people have, that they can see the merit and the value in things that even they may not personally prefer. Another sign of a lack of intellectual depth is to think that learning stops after your formal education or after college. Confusing having a degree with genuine intelligence, and then furthermore using it as a crutch to substitute for a lack of intellectual ability, the ability to think critically, is a huge sign of low class. If you cannot think critically, non-judgmentally, or in some sort of rational manner, then your college degree is almost meaningless. Because one of the things that you should take, it doesn't matter what your degree is, whether or not you're a political science major, a gender studies major, engineering, whatever, right? Regardless of what your major is, regardless of whatever field you choose to go into academically or professionally, the ability to think critically and participate in discussion, debate, and rhetoric is absolutely a fundamental skill to have as a human being. And you cannot communicate effectively, bringing this back a little bit to communication. You cannot communicate effectively if you cannot think critically and react without judgment to information, especially if it contradicts your worldview. Now, take a political science major, someone who has a bachelor's in political science, and they're in an argument with someone over a certain topic, and they are using manipulation, ad hominem attacks, calling them names and whatnot, and any number of logical fallacies like making large generalizations or using anecdotes like people's individual stories to lend credibility to their argument, or straw man arguments, making up arguments that nobody actually posits in order to give their side more credibility. Doing things like that, committing these logical fallacies, and being intellectually dishonest is simply a sign that you are not on the right side of the argument, and that you do not have any class or decorum or honor or respect for the person that you are arguing with. Arguments should be won on the basis of merit, truth, and nothing more. And if you cannot meet those standards, then you're wrong. The next thing, and perhaps the last thing, really, that makes you seem low class is imitating the refinement of old money and failing at it. When old money was a trend in fashion for a little bit, it's definitely died down now, and it was a very, very short thing. But there was a few months of time in 2024 where all anybody could talk about was the old money aesthetic, how to look old money, pieces in your wardrobe that can make you appear old money. It became so formulaic, so contrived, that it started to make old money feel like a costume. And the ultimate irony is that people will do their best to... I'm sorry for the car alarm in the back, by the way. I'll try to cut this out. Okay, car alarm's off. I can talk again. Where was I? Okay, so imitating the refinement of old money. Um, Looking old money was kind of a fashion trend. It was a bit of a costume, and people will look at the characters, of like Kendall Roy and Shiv and Logan Roy from Succession, copy their style and assume that as their whole personality, and think that suddenly dressing up like one of those characters from a TV show makes them old money. And the problem here, and again, the ultimate irony, is that the characters in the show Succession are only old money in appearance. Here we go again with the car alarm. Okay, so old money. As the patriarch of the Roy family, Logan made his fortune in the 20th century by building up ATN, the news network that in real life, or that imitates Fox News in real life. So he built up ATN in the 20th century by making it into this massive media empire, and now he and his family are super rich. His children, again, Kendall, Shiv, and I can't remember the name of the third child, or the third and fourth child, but his children are rich, right? His children are the products of generational wealth. And for the most part, they do somewhat dress like old money. They have expectations for how they're supposed to conduct themselves. They have expectations for how they're supposed to appear in public. And as Logan's children, they mostly try and fit that image. But they and their fortunes are too immature, and they are too childish and vulgar to really be considered old money. And if you don't know what I mean by that, go watch the show again. Look at the way that they treat each other behind closed doors when nobody else is watching, and you'll see what I mean. They are ruthless, they're vicious, and they're absolutely vulgar to each other, and they're vulgar to people in the way that they conduct themselves. And there's nothing old money about that. Now, I want to preface this, or I want to caveat this all by saying that I am not old money. I don't pretend to be. But the reason I say this is because being actually old money means developing and refining your taste over a very long period of time. And when it comes to wealth, most old money people have inherited such wealth over a period of centuries. So generations and generations, stretching back centuries, have passed down this generational wealth to the current one, and those people are actual old money. Simply dressing up in Ralph Lauren polos with a cashmere sweater draped over your shoulders and wearing some cheap chino pants is not old money at all. You just look preppy, but you are not old money. That does not make you old money. Real old money people are very discreet, and being actually old money means that when you are walking down the street, people will probably never realize that you are coming from old money, because they do not care about flaunting their wealth, because they already know that they have it. Old money people do not care about flaunting their wealth because they already know that they have it. They already know how wealthy they are. They don't need you to know that they are wealthy as well. They value the anonymity that comes from being discreet about their true wealth. And to bring this back to me, right? Because I'm not perfect when it comes to this either. Again, I'm not old money, but overvaluing abundance over restraint, or the quality of certain things, especially with regard to material things, is a sign that somebody is A, not old money, and B, probably low class. I frequently, for example, have to stop and have the conversation with myself about whether or not what I'm about to buy, especially when it comes to my passions, is truly a wise investment of my resources, or if I'm simply squandering my wealth in the pursuit of consumerist behavior and keeping up with the Joneses. For example, there was a litany of watches that were released at Watches and Wonders in 2024. Rolex released a new GMT Master. Bremont came out with a ton of watches that were not really well received by the public. Omega released the White Dial Speedy. They released the glossy Black Aquaterras. They released 3 new Planet Oceans. I've talked about this before on the channel many times. In the world of firearms, of which I am also a passionate follower of, Glock and Aimpoint actually just did a collaboration, and they released their new Koa optics, which come pre-mounted on the 19, the 45, and the 43X series of pistols. Additionally, Sig Sauer released the P365 Fuse. There have been a bunch of new developments and new product releases in both the watch world and the firearms world, which I follow very closely. But when it really comes down to brass tacks, do I really need those things? Is it really wise to spend my money on those things and have more possessions taking up space around me? Or is it wiser to put that money to work for me and make it make more money on its own? That's the question always. So when we talk about old money and refinement and class, you have to ask yourself sometimes, is the top shelf whiskey really worth it? Do you really need the tomahawk steak painted with gold leaf at the restaurant? I'm talking here about the kind of individual who has enough taste to know that Patek Philippe makes good watches, but then proceeds to take that watch to a nightclub and pour champagne on it in order to flex, right? Is that person really old money? Are they really as high class as they think themselves to be? In my opinion, the answer is no. That is going to really sum it up for this video. Again, as I stated before, I don't want anybody to walk away from this video feeling like I'm personally attacking them. I am not out here making these videos because I'm trying to make any of you feel like you don't matter or you're not somebody important. You are. You are somebody important. But I want this video, as I said, to serve as the starting point for what is hopefully a beneficial discussion for everybody involved. So if you have any further thoughts on the content of this video, if you feel like I missed something, or if there's something that you strongly disagree with, please, I would really like to hear your comments down below. Let me know what you think, and let's have a good discussion. So with that being said, I want to wish you all a happy, healthy, and safe 2025. Be well, be safe, and take care. I'll see you all soon.